This is All Grit.
Hosted by Animation Tanya. Today on the podcast, we are in conversation with Arpit Mittal, whose latest venture, tech startup called Yellow Class. An engineer by education, Arpit has co founded multiple successful businesses, including Edcited and Roofpik, and has had a brief stint as the director of product management, Housing.com. A seasoned entrepreneur, Arpit describes to us the process behind finding problems worth solving for. What does it take to build something of your own, and when do you know that it's time to let go of what you've so earnestly built?
Hi, Arpit. Good morning. Thank you for coming on the podcast. It is great to have you.
Hi Animesh, very good morning to you. Good to have with you guys.
Hi, Arpit. We're very excited for this conversation. We'd like to start by asking you to briefly introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi Tanya, good to connect. Uh, I'll start with a brief introduction about myself, and then we can take it forward. So Tanya, I come from a startup background for almost a decade. I have been in the startup ecosystem. I started my journey way back in 2011 in the startup ecosystem with my first startup. That was Edcited. So it was in edtech space. I We built it from 2011 to 2015. 2015 it got acquired. Post acquisition, so it got acquired by a company named CoCubes. Post acquisition, I worked with them for some time before the acquisition with Aeon Habit happened. So I moved on further to lead my startup journey from there. 2016, I came up with another startup, Roofpik. It was in real estate space, not selling and buying of real estate, but it was in a tech real estate space. 2016 to 18, we ran that. 2018, it again got acquired by FastFox, which subsequently got acquired by Housing. Uh, I was with Housing for 1.5 years, heading their product for consumer tech. And late 2019, I jumped back again into the startup ecosystem. So kind of a roller coaster ride within the startup world. Yeah, that's how the journey looked like. Coming to my background, so I come from a small educational family uh, uh, from Haridwar. So my parents still stay there, and my education has been in Haridwar only. And post that, I went to VIT Vellore to do my engineering. Graduated in 2009. Yeah, so that's the journey I have been into.
So we want to start by talking about you, right? So what you're doing currently? You are a co-founder of Yellow Class, which you began recently in the lockdown times, right?
Mhm.
And before this, as you said, that
Yeah,
you have been
that's
part
right.
of several companies and a lot of ventures, right? So
Yeah.
we want to ask you, what made you stay in the startup space?
Uh, okay, interesting question. So the passion to solve for people uh, actually keep me motivated this entire time of 10 years to stay back in the startup ecosystem. Um, Along with that, I would say that conviction in yourself, conviction in the dreams that you have is again equally important. So that is another aspect which I believe helped me stay alive for 10 years. And last but not least, I think the support from family, friends, your wife, everyone. So that matters a lot while you are on a difficult journey. So I think these are the things which helped me kept motivated and going after my dreams.
Right. What's interesting is that although you don't have an MBA yourself, like you said, you are an engineer from VIT Vellore, most of your startups have had a co-founder who was an MBA. So tell us a little bit more about the equation. When you're looking for a co-founder, what are you looking for?
Okay. So How I see it is, I call it like balancing the equation, right? So you have to balance the equation always, right? There's a left hand side and right hand side of the equation, right? And the earlier you are able to balance it, right, it's better. I believe that startups are built on with two major aspects when it comes to co-founders. Okay, one is the action bias, and second is the direction, right? That you are taking that action in the right direction, right? So two very important aspects which everyone, I believe, I have came across during my last 10 years of journey. So they are the two common aspects which everyone had, right? So they were very action oriented, and they were doing those actions in the right way. When it comes to MBAs, right, as you said that all my co-founders have been an MBA, right? I believe the direction sense is what they bring on the table, right? So MBAs generally, like, that is my own personal observation, and how I perceive that is where it gives people tools to analyze things in a lot many ways, right? So that is something that helps in trying to break down a situation into multiple parts and look at it a little differently, right? While you are in an action mode, you do not realize that you may be doing those actions which will lead you nowhere, right? So I think that is a big value add which comes with a business background co-founder. Along with that, when it comes to co-founder, I think the single most important thing is a clear understanding between both the co-founders, or if you have more. So uh, you like everything else is figured out, right? Miscommunication, not having a clear understanding, not having difficult conversations, right? So many a times what happens, you avoid having those difficult conversations. What if things do not go as we plan? What if that happens, right? What if there is a downside? What if this happens, something is not working out, right? You need to have a complete clarity before you start. Even after you start, you need to have that constant communication with your co-founders.
Yeah, so I wanted to say that we have been running this podcast together, and the thing which you said about the point you made about difficult situations, difficult conversations, so that has
Yeah,
happened a lot, and we have fought a lot as well. Like, I'm sure this is a story of every co-founding office. So,
yeah,
but what it does is that it gives you a lot of clarity, and it's because you come from a certain perspective and somebody else is coming from a certain perspective, and then your mind opens up to newer things.
yeah, yeah,
With that, I wanted to
definitely.
ask you about Edcited. So, Edcited, you touched upon the edtech space very early on in 2011 itself, and it was a point where companies like EduComp was the major player, like, and they were
Mhm.
into edtech hardware of the edtech, right?
Yeah.
And what motivated you to start Edcited in the edtech space in a point where technology penetration in India was not that much? I believe that you were selling ERP tools to schools at that point in time, but something like computers in schools or email IDs in schools was a very new concept even in 2011. So, what made you start Edcited?
Yep. Uh, okay. Interesting question. So it came from a personal experience while I was at my college. I was still doing my engineering back then. So I applied to Harvard for a new program that Harvard started. That program was called Harvard Business School 2+2 MBA program. So that was the first year it got started. Okay. So I wanted to, I had no clue how to apply, what all we need, like how to go about it. So I wanted to do it on my own, and I struggled a lot in trying and figuring out different pieces, different blocks to actually put up my application with, right? So sitting back way back in 2008 when I applied in VIT Vellore, I realized there is a complete breakage in communication. Right, the communication was not there. If I want to talk to someone in Harvard, a student over there who is already part of that ecosystem, right? How do I do that? right? If I want to know who else from my own community want is applying, right, and if we can actually support each other, that was not there, right?
Mhm.
So I faced that kind of a challenge while I was trying to push my own application, and that made me realize that something can be done around in that space, right? So at that during the time there were two budding startups which were coming. One was LinkedIn and second was Facebook. So they were still early ages of Facebook, right? Today they are like the biggest companies across, but yeah, that was the early days. So but they had different purposes. So Facebook had a purpose to make a social connection, right, while LinkedIn was completely focused towards professionals, right, and students neither fall anywhere, right? So I came up with a concept of building a educational ecosystem, right? Educational network for students way back in 2011, and that was the idea with which we started off um, Edcited. So at the era when internet was not there, phones were not there, we were still pre-internet era, right? But yeah, we took a bet on it. I had a very strong conviction that this is something which is going to transform the education ecosystem.
Right. So, another star on your wall of fame is Roofpik, which you founded in 2016 after Edcited was acquired by CoCubes. But with Roofpik, you entered a new terrain, which is the real estate industry. So, can you tell us some of the challenges that you faced in starting a company in a completely different industry from your last venture?
Yeah. So it is very important to have a domain knowledge about an industry, right? With Excited, I had that domain knowledge because my parents are teachers. I have been seeing the education system closely throughout my childhood, right? I have built an understanding around it. But when I jumped to real estate, I had no clue about the industry, right? What works, how it works, what will happen if I do certain actions, right? I had no clue around that. So one of the most significant challenge that came up while I was doing Roofpick was that with the limited understanding around the industry. So I had a problem statement. I know that there is a problem, some problem that exists in the industry, for which I started off building that venture up. But one of the key challenges that came up while we started the journey was that we had very limited understanding around the industry as a whole. So in the while I was doing my first startup, I realized that the expectations were low, right? People have less questions to ask, right? When you do your startup again, when it's the next time, right, there are more expectations from people whom you are working with as well, from people who are back at your family, home, friends. Everyone have a higher level of expectation. That is something that you that that changes. Second, I think one of the important thing is the pace, right? Over a period of time, you should actually add on your pace, right, of doing things. But with your experience, you try and figure out a lot of things in your head that okay, this will work, this will not work, right? Many a time it helps, many a time it actually slows you down, right? When you're actually starting up fresh, right, you need to make a lot of mistakes, right? And you actually need to make it. You cannot actually try and not make it and see that okay, how can I build a startup without making mistakes? I think that's a that's a key learning which I had while I did my second startup, that it is perfectly okay to make mistakes.
Right. And Roofpick was also your second startup after Excited that you decided to sell off, and this time it was to Fastfox. So, what is the thought process behind deciding that this is the time when you should let go of the product that you've made? And both animation, I can relate to it because we feel very strongly about all grit, and you were kind of making a product at that scale and then deciding to sell it off. So what goes behind in your mind when you're making that decision?
Okay. At Roofpick, what we are doing was we were a review and rating platform in real estate, something more like TripAdvisor or Zomato, right? So we are collecting a lot of UGC around around different real estate properties. What we realized while we were in the business was that the life cycle of a consumer was too long. That it's not a repeat use case like a restaurant or a hotel. Being a UGC platform, you need to have significant amounts of content flowing in to the platform. So the content that we are generating was highly of very high value for people who were seeking it, right? But the life cycle was too long, right? Um, so one of the key learning is that for any startup to actually create an impact in the world, you need to become synonymous to a solution, right? You need to get into a muscle memory of a person. That okay, so a very early example that I read somewhere was that um, people called let's get Xerox. They do not say let's get photocopy done, right? So Xerox has become a synonym to a solution, right? So I think if you can't become that, right, then it's difficult to survive. You will just fight your way out, and but then at the end of the day, you are not creating impact on people's life. And with Roofpik, I think we realized that while we were in the journey that as an independent solution, it is very difficult to actually scale and bring impact in the life of people. And that's where you decide that you want to align it with a complementary solution along with as a combined product offering, what we call as a product market fit. So you try and do that, and in that just we decided that okay, we want to move ahead, and we took a call to actually get aligned with FastFox in the journey of solving real estate.
Now, in this, I see two decisions, Arpit. First decision was to sell FastFox, which I'm sure would have been one of the hardest decisions,
Yeah.
and because it's very close to your heart. And the second decision was to join housing.com, right? So you
Yeah.
have been doing your ventures like Edcited and after Edcited, Roofpik. Now suddenly you are working for another entrepreneur,
Yeah.
right? So how was that transition like? Because I believe that if once you start up, right, once you start your own thing, you become a forger of visions. You want to create visions and you want to follow that vision statement. So when you join somebody else's company, you're just following that vision statement, like somebody else's vision statement. So how
Mhm.
was that shift for you like?
Initially, if I tell you honestly, like I was very afraid of joining a company, right? I was not mentally prepared, and that happens with a lot of founders, right? I've seen people taking a lot of time. I took a lot of time myself. I took like more than 6 months to actually decide that if I want to go for a job or not after actually moving out from a startup. It's not an easy transition, right? Because it's not like switching a job, getting an offer letter from someone, and then saying, "Wow, I'm moving to US, or I'm moving to a new job where I get a better pay scale or things like that," right? So you're doing something very different. It's like a doctor becoming a lawyer, right? I think aligning with someone else's vision was one of the best things that happened. Um, you realize that once you become a part of a larger ecosystem, there are a lot of learnings for you over there as well. It is not that the learning curve has gone down, or you are not doing anything meaningful. You were only doing meaningful things while you are doing your own startup. But many a time that gets stuck with founders, and they spend significant amount of time either in trying to actually come up with that fear, or in trying to do things which will not make any sense. So building up startup after startup without any vision, without any core thesis doesn't help. Only because you can do stuff doesn't make that you are solving anything meaningful or anything uh, which is worth solving for. So I think when I moved to housing, I realized that there are a lot of opportunities. So bigger companies are looking for people like us, right? To because they want people who can come and disrupt, right? So founders are good, are really good with that, right? They are good in defying logics and believing, having a very strong belief system. So many times you do not want to work for logics. You want to work on a belief system that okay, I believe that this is going to work, right? irrespective of the number of failures that you may encounter during the journey. But at the end, you try and make it work, and that has been the success story with all the founders, right? They followed their passion, not a logic system. That I believe that this logic is going to work. If logics are going to work, then I think for founders there is no space to develop anything. Then all the big corporates will take over, and they will fundamentally run the entire startup ecosystem.
Right. And one of the things that you've been kind of mentioning throughout this conversation is problems that are worth solving for, right? So I want to kind of dig deeper into it. So after a year and a half at housing.com, you started yet another startup which you're working on right now, which is Yellow Class. So how does an entrepreneur like you go about looking for these problems that are worth solving for?
Okay. So every problem is an opportunity. It is just that how are you able to discover it, right? How are you able to discover a problem? So it's not that you read about it somewhere, or someone brings it to you, right? So what I've observed is these are like pieces and bits which it's like if you look at movie actors, right? So what they do is they improvise a lot of different characters which they've met in their real life, right? So if you look at if you read reviews of any star, whether you talk about Bollywood or Hollywood, any star, right, what they say is that this character is inspired by that, right? Someone that they have met personally in their real life, someone that they have interacted with, someone that they've lived with, right? It creates a deeper impact on you, right? So what I've realized is that these are the problems which you are somewhere related to, right? It is just that many times it occurs to you that okay, this is a problem that can be solved, right? This is something that where we can do something 10x. There are a lot of companies like Tesla, right, who have become far more bigger with real world problems that they have realized that is out there and someone need to come up and solve it. So Tesla was doing batteries, right? And they jumped into making cars, right? And they would have realized it, right, while they were doing it, right? So something that you are doing, something that has happened with you in the past, something that you can relate to, right? That's how you come up with the problems that are worth solving for.
Taking the same sentiment forward, so like there are so many problems worth solving. There are so many entrepreneurs who are on the edge, like people like us, right? So no matter what is the educational background or if there is any education at all, it is the right nudge which is needed to push you in the direction and take that leap of faith. So what advice would you give to such people who are just sitting at the edge, either studying or in a corporate job, but like they want to be entrepreneurs and like help them take that leap of faith?
I think people need to have belief in themselves that they are going to actually build something meaningful. They are going to do something meaningful in their life, right? Whether you go to a job or you start your own venture or you pick up a sports to build your career in, right? Everyone is trying to figure out something meaningful to do in their life, right? It is just one of the journeys that you take when you are doing entrepreneurship, right? It is not something. So think about it. So when I look at startup, I figure out that we are very fortunate, and we are like we are. Everyone says that it's a very risky proposition to go into a startup or to start a startup, right? Think about someone preparing for I would say boxing, or someone who is preparing for a movie, right? Who is trying to become a star, right? What are the odds of they becoming successful? Look at the odds of someone becoming successful in sports, right, or in the entertainment industry as compared to in a startup ecosystem, right? The odds are pretty good. Someone want to become a NASA astronaut, right? And people follow their passion, right? You need to be passionate. You need to have that belief system in yourself that you are going to make it, right? And I think the decision becomes much easier, much smoother. Obviously, you need to leave certain opportunities to do that, right? Certain opportunities which are right at your hand. And I believe people who take that plunge reap the benefits later. But yeah, you have to let go to actually do something worth that you believe in.
Now we've reached almost the end of the podcast, and I want to ask you a question that we ask all our other guests as well. What is the hardest decision that you've ever had to take in your career so far?
Um, I think when I took a call to actually let go a couple of people from my first startup, that was the hardest decision that I had to take at that point in time. So when I look back the entire 10 years journey, I think that that decision took me a couple of months before I actually took it. And The constraints were that they were all good people, right? But they were not right for the job that we had for them, right? So it is like their careers were not aligned to what we are doing, and we realized that it was not working out. We tried and figured out ways over a period of time that something will work out, we'll try and do this. So we realized that it is super important to have the right person for the right job. You cannot have you cannot make people do things which they are not actually mentally aligned to do, right? And it actually hampers both ways, right? It was actually taking a big toll on their career future as well as it was taking a big toll on the company. So I realized when the best thing that could have been done, and when I look at now, I think that was the best decision that we took, that we talked to them and we decided that things are not working out, and we need to actually take a corrective measure from there. And when I talk to them today, right, I think they are doing fabulously well in their own careers. And I think if they would have sticked around too long, they would have lost the direction of what they could have done well somewhere else, and trying to figure out if they can fit in somewhere in their current role. So I believe most difficult thing was to actually having that difficult conversation the first time with people, and that was, I believe, is a very important learning.
So with this, we are moving to the last question of the podcast. But before that, I wanted to just sum up the conversation we had. Right. So we while interviewing you, we realized a lot of things which are apparent, but you made it like real of by saying it. Like for example, having disputes within co-founders, find how to find the right co-founder, and at the same time how you don't actively look for a problem, you just come across it. You cannot read about a problem in a newspaper and suddenly say that, oh, I want to start a company. But you have to experience the thing, you have to be on the business side of it to like get it and go forward with your startup, and how convictions run startups, not logic. That was my biggest takeaway. So with that, I want to ask you that this is a fun part of the podcast where you have the stage for 2 minutes. You can talk about something interesting which you have been doing. Now, I know you're going to say yellow class. You have been busy with working with yellow class, but apart from that, right? So apart from that, have you been like, did you get in touch with a hobby, or did you start a new hobby of yours in the lockdown era?
Okay. I think if I get an opportunity to talk for 2 minutes, I'll talk about building relationships, right, with people that you work with. I think whether you work with a startup or you work with a big corporate anywhere, I think the fun part about working is that you meet a lot of new people, right? You tend to spend a lot of time with them. In fact, more time than you spend with your family. You spend your entire day with those people, right? One of the things that I have a very strong and core belief is that you should work at a place that you love, right? Then you are spending like 10 hours at a place that you are happy in. For you to being happy, you need to be happy with the people that are there, right? Because work is something that is going to be there. You go to a company A, B, C, D, you start a startup A, B, C, D. It doesn't matter, right? You are going to work, right? Those 10 hours, right? The important part is you need to be happy, and it's the people that make you happy. So build good relationships with people who you are working with, right? That will just ease out everything around you. So I think I during this lockdown I invested a lot in that, right? Lockdown gave you a lot of time to actually introspect and see that the things that were missing out of your life. And I realized that these were the few things which I was not doing well, because I always say that I was busy with my stuff, and I realized that I have time to actually talk to people, right? Reach out to people who I've lost contact with, talk to people more frequently, talk about stuff that is not really important to me, but important to them as well, right? So all of that I started doing, and it really makes at least me and the other person whom I'm talking to happy. So I think that is very, very important, irrespective of what you are doing and where you are doing.